Hey there, Stephanie Shea here, Chief Astrologer for janspiller.com. I'm so excited to be here with Val D'Ambrosio. This is our second episode together. If you missed the first one, Scorpio season, I highly recommend it just because we've moved into Sagittarius. There's some good juicy tidbits in there that you can use all throughout the year. Val is a guide, right? She does coaching, but it's more in a guide style, and she helps people to really have, you would say, their rebirthing process, right?
Yeah, yeah. Basically stepping into the next iteration of the who they're becoming. You know,
Hmm.
I was just talking about how I think that we're constantly becoming anew, but we're not taught to do so deliberately. And like I just see it around me all the time, and there's so much magic when you really drop into doing it deliberately in the way that you're creating your new self, you know?
Absolutely, and I've just been excited about this series because so many themes come up through the astrology, and there's some practical tips I can say as an astrologer, but a lot of times people want to know, what do I do with this, And I think this is a great matchup that we have going because Val works with all kinds of people, all ages, right? Different backgrounds, couples, businesses. And you can take what's happening in astrology and feel really empowered that you're not at the mercy of it. There's things you can actively do. So, with that, I'll jump into a description of Sagittarius energy. We just moved out of Scorpio. Sagittarius season is officially November 21st through December 20th, and Sagittarius is a fire sign. It's got some really fun, positive expressions. I have so much fun with Sagittarius people. They're all about freedom, spiritual connection, a great sense of adventure, usually looking for knowledge. There's a lot of Sagittarius people in education. And it's also associated with having this faith that things are going to work out, and that's so necessary, to not immediately go to the worst possible outcome, but instead leave space, right, for the best possible outcome. And there's also a sense of truth, speaking the truth, seeking the truth, and being ethical with Sagittarius. So with each sign, there's also some expressions that can come out when the energy is a bit out of balance. And this happens throughout the zodiac in different ways. Just when people are stressed, maybe they're having a lot going on that's not letting their higher self come through. And what can happen in the energy of Sagittarius is things that have to do with thinking of right and wrong, like extreme thinking and fanaticism without entertaining a spectrum of possibilities that might exist in the middle. Broad judgments without thinking about individual circumstances. If people who might say, all women do this, all men do this, and you're like, could it be any other way? Impulsive action without researching the facts, or maybe just talking over people and not really listening or asking questions. And I think being told or being blind to temporary solutions that can sometimes, I think of Sagittarius, again, one of the things I sort of celebrate is go big or go home. And sometimes it's exciting to be bold and really try something new. But sometimes I think that out of balance Sagittarius can think, well, if I can't build my whole entire house right now, maybe I should just give up, or something like that. So realizing, well, what if you did something as a temporary way? And Val is going to talk a little bit of things you can do in the now that your future self would thank you for. I'm really excited about that. So that's kind of the overview. We've been feeling some of the out of balance Sagittarius energy. And again, this doesn't have to do with Sagittarius people per se. We're talking about the astrological influence, and the South Node throughout 2021 has been in Sagittarius. So I think it can bring this out in all of us, no matter what our zodiac sign. I've seen a lot of polarization in people. It absolutely has to be this way, and I feel like, ooh, we gotta compromise here. So with that, now knowing what happens, what can happen, and especially as we are finishing up South Node in Sagittarius, what are some things that might bring this energy up and some solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I love that you also point out that it's not, you don't just have to be Sagittarius, right? In this season, it could really kick things up. And I just think about, especially now, holiday season, right? And I think that holiday season, a lot of people feel very differently about the holidays. Some people, it's very hard. There's a lot of strained relationships, so that could really set people out of balance. There's a lot of pressure, maybe even people feeling lonely. It kicks up a lot of things like that if you're not in a relationship or maybe don't have the family that you want. There's also an anticipation, almost like expecting the worst thing to happen. If you have a strained relationship with a family member or anything like that, and you're going to see them, it could automatically, before you go them, it could kick on your autonomic nervous system to act in this kind of fight or flight way. And additionally, then you have on top of that cultural beliefs and different religious beliefs that could also strain that and create an imbalance around the holiday time. And then also just that whole right or wrong piece, and it's my way is the right way. I think about just even what's happening globally with vaccinated or not vaccinated, and so I think there are a lot of things that could bring a significant amount of anxiety right now. And so being aware of how we can stay in greater balance could be profoundly useful.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's kind of how I love working with astrology. Knowing what's coming up, it's sort of like preparing for the weather. If you know it's going to rain, grab your raincoat. If you know it's Sagittarius season, maybe there's things you can do if you start dealing with someone who is saying this is absolutely right and they're not budging. Or, hey, we got to take a look at ourselves. What if we catch ourselves doing that, you know?
Right, absolutely, right? Because that's how it, that's, I think that's a beautiful key piece is acknowledge when somebody else might be heading down that highway in that direction toward that imbalance, or checking in with our own selves. And what we tend to do is, even though we're acting from somewhat of a selfish place, but like if we put the energy on us in the sense of attention on us, like what can I do differently right now? When I think about certain things you said about the needing to be right, and when I think about, again, going back to what you said around freedom, right? Sagittarius loves freedom and they love to learn. And so when I think about those two things, I think, okay, so if we're releasing the need to be right, that means in that moment we get the opportunity to get curious. And in that curiosity, we can learn something more. And also, without the need to be right, we actually free ourselves from that holding and that gripping that this way is the right way. And when we get too closed-minded on that, that's not freedom. That's actually making us more tight, more bound, and putting us into this kind of again, fight or flight way of being, and then we're locked. And so just that simple curiosity, asking more questions, and also the invitation to listen, right? If we really listen, like if we don't really understand, like, so tell me more about why you would do that. That's interesting. I see it a little bit differently. What tell me what led you to that, or what makes you think that way? And what that invites as well is it invites now a dialogue where now if there is a different point of view, that there's space between you and that person, and in that spaciousness allows the freedom for a deeper connection.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I love that. I think it's useful instead of what we often do if we feel that we have the right way, what we're thinking is right. It's very common, and I see this a lot in coaching, is that we get defensive and I call it, we're already listening. As I'm listening to the person talk, I'm already thinking about what I want to say back to them to make my point, or to defend myself, or to prove to them I'm right. It's a lot of this proving energy. And if you think about, since everything is energy, when we're coming at a conversation from that kind of perspective and that kind of energy, it automatically will put that person in a closed off state. So there's less opportunity for knowledge, there's less opportunity for growth and expansion, there's less opportunity for freedom, because now we're just locked in again.
Wow. Yeah, I that really resonated with me, and I really think that is the key, because if you know Sagittarius energy right now, it's happening. People do want to feel more free. This is one way to achieve that. I think we can free ourselves from feeling affected by how other people are acting, for example. Like, we don't have to buy into drama if that's happening, right?
Right. Well, that's the thing, like that, and that's what I see a lot as well. I mean, not only within my clients, but also in my own life. But I also see it, to me, victim mentality is being the effect of an external thing that's occurring, right? So in that moment, if we're making this person's way of being, right? Maybe it's their perspective, maybe it's the way they're showing up that we would do it differently, and we think there's a right way, right? That in that moment, now I'm upset, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed, I'm sad, I'm whatever emotion it brings up. That means that my moment, my happiness is incumbent upon whether or not they agree with me or they're on the same alignment with me. Well, that sucks. Talk about lack of freedom, right? In that moment, literally giving that person's response all of my power, as opposed to recognizing everyone's entitled to their opinion. Just because it's what I see doesn't mean it's the right way. Just because we're all coming from our own perspective, our own story, our own history, and we have no idea oftentimes what there is. And the only way to get there is by curiosity.
Oh, that's very well said, and that is sort of what I look for as the antidote when there's strong out of balance in one energy, such as Sagittarius. The opposite on the zodiac wheel is Gemini. We happen to have a resident Gemini with Valerie, so I think this is everything you're saying. I'm like, this is exactly, you're articulating the astrology, like how I would envision it playing out in people's lives. And this is what's needed right now, a little dose of that curiosity. There's other times, maybe we get into Gemini season and things are getting a little haywire. We might need a little more dose of Sag energy to balance things. All of astrology is balance, but what's going on right now, I think, is this lack of curiosity. And I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little about temporary solutions.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you said that, like I was thinking about when Gemini, like what am I, a triple Gemini, I guess. But so like I think when we can get so like, oh my God, like so bogged down, sometimes going back to the big picture or going toward the big picture is useful. But I think it can really bog us down because, it's like go, like what you said, like go big or go home. And I think sometimes what we can do in that is then we have, there's an expectation of immediate results, there's an expectation that it's going to be some grandiose thing, right? Again, and if it doesn't happen that way, then we're disappointed, right? So we're giving up our freedom, our happiness, our joy in all those moments, and we're getting locked in, and it has to be this certain way. And I was having a conversation with a girlfriend, and she said this phenomenal thing, and I thought it was just like, I thought it was so great, and I was like, I'm taking that and putting it in my toolbox, and essentially she was like, for example, and I'm not just saying men and women, but in this scenario it was her husband, and she was talking about how they have two young children, and she was just pointing out of like, hey honey, like just so you know, I do all of this stuff, but also it's not only the doing the stuff, it's preparing and getting ready and all the stuff that you think would be behind the stuff that gets done. And I just want, first of all, you to acknowledge it, and this is what acknowledgement would look like, but also I also need you to, need you to help me out with it. You need your support around it. And what she was saying is her now self is like, just watching when he's not now doing it. You know what I mean? He didn't do, she told him yesterday, he didn't do it today. Like he should be doing it. You know what I mean? And there's that instant, you got to get this, you got to go from zero to, get the A+ right away, and understandably why she would want that, right? Because she's like, come on, honey, come on, let's go. But here's what I like to always understand. We all have different ways of processing. Some of us process things slower than others. It has nothing to do with intelligence. And we all, and also depending on, again, not all men, not all women, but our brains are wired very differently. And so when we acknowledge that, sometimes it does take somebody to hear a few things a few times. Sometimes they do need a little bit of time to really digest it, take it in, start to experience what that would be for them, and then finding their way to do it. And so what she said is, she asked herself the question, what would my future self benefit from? And I love that, because in that moment, her now self wants to go, come on, come on, come on. Why are you doing this? But her future self is like, wait, okay, hold on a second. If I keep nagging him, and if I do it anyway, right? I see that a lot with young marriages, or people that have children, or with, again, men and women, not all men and women. It's like I asked you to do it. Forget it. I'll do it. Forget it. I'll do it. Forget it. I'll do it. Fast forward 5 years, 10 years from now, there's the story I hear again and again is, I do everything. They're not doing anything. And what I always point out is, but yeah, you set them up for that. You also played a part, right? We all take responsibility in relationships. And that's another key thing, is that relationships, all relationships, by the way, whether it's business or intimate, it doesn't matter. It is not about 50-50, 70-30 responsibility. It is about everyone has their responsibility, period. And so in that moment, you get to go, okay, if I just back out, and if I just let my future self kind of be okay, and my now self just keep focusing on the fact that if I give him space and time, he will get this. And then that little bit of space, you start to gain your own personal trust in yourself. You start to gain patience. You start to gain greater trust in the relationship, right? And I think it builds this skill and this tool inside of ourselves to not be so attached that it's got to be this big result, or they've got to happen yesterday. And it creates for also just greater connection with those people in our lives. And you can even liken it to, let's say that, I'm thinking about one client, and she's like, we need a new roof on the house. We need a new roof on the house. And it's a fairly new house. And her husband's like, what? Wait, what? And it's like, again, that whole go big or go home. So even just in those moments, like, especially if you're in your relationship, whether you're in a business or whether you're in a relationship, is to even state like, hey, so this is what's coming up for me. So this is another way to deal with it. This is what's coming up for me. I literally feel this tremendous need to have this. Can we talk about it? Can we go through the process of it? Can I help you? Can I explain to you why I have this need? And just see where you stand in it. And if they're like, absolutely not, right? I don't want to put on the roof. I don't want to do this. It's like, okay, are you willing to have a conversation with me so I can understand? Tell me more about why you don't feel like we need a roof. And are you willing to hear why I think we might need a roof, right? So I know I kind of went in two different directions, but I think the future self aspect and where you're going to gain the most, and also in that moment, again, pointing out your big ask, pointing out your why of where you're moving at the right direction without steamrolling everyone else around you and just going for it, but also making sure everyone's on board by checking in.
Yeah. This is all super useful stuff, and it seems like it just requires people to step back and stay conscious. And I think this is such a gift that you're giving to your clients, helping them get to this different perspective. Because when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard probably to know what's going on. So yeah, I think if you'd find out a lot about somebody's fears, like in the roof example, they could have a fear because really they're worried a tree's going to fall. Maybe they need to address the tree branches or something like this. So that's really valuable. I think that this Venus retrograde is going to be very useful during Sagittarius season. So Venus will station retrograde on December 19th, but we're in the shadow. So I'm already starting to feel some influence, and as the season of Sagittarius goes on, right up to that retrograde at the very end of the sun in Sagittarius, we're being directed to start slowing our energy, to check in with what we need in the now, right? And what you were describing, not expecting immediate results, but we are planting the seeds for our future fulfillment for sure. That's a great use of this upcoming energy. And I just want to check with you, see if there's other stories or anything you wanted to add in regards to Sagittarius.
Well, I mean, what comes to mind, and I may be going off, so please bring me back. If so, I just want to check in, because when I think about what you just said with Venus, knowing we're in Sag season, right? And although Sag is that fiery energy, right? Again, I think that kind of reactionary, like fire is so awesome. It's like go getter and, and action, and then there's also, again, like you said, the imbalance is the like the lashing out, the quick to make, and just to bring in that forceful energy and react. And when I think about that kind of piece of the sense of slowing down and tapping into, when I think about Venus, I think about, okay, what do I really love? Like what's important to me? What is aligned with my values and my truth? And when I think about myself, and I'm rebirthing myself right now, if you will, and I have been for quite a while, and I feel like I'm stepping into this. And the next iteration is around my friendships. And I think there is this piece of sometimes when we are, and I know we're just moved out of Scorpio season, but I do think about whenever when we are changing, or especially around the holidays or any of these other things, when there's a lot of emotion that's coming up, and I think it's natural and normal to go straight to the place of defense or anger or that fiery energy. And but instead, like I'm thinking about just what happened recently with me is that as I'm kind of creating new friendships in my life because of what's happened the past few years, where literally it was like a dismantling of all these areas of my life, including friendships, I'm very discerning and deliberate about the people that I hold close to me. And my friend's visiting me right now, and it was beautiful because I noticed some stuff was coming up and I wanted to talk to him about it, but I didn't want to come from the place of you're doing this, I da, 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 da. And I just went, I was like, hey, I want to share with you like what's coming up for me, and this is totally my story, and I'm not even saying it's true, but I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that, and I just want to express my feelings, because I know if I don't, you're gonna feel them. You're gonna feel them in the room, and I don't want to start walking around them and like broke like eggshells, and so. But what it really invited me to do, going back to the Venus and slowing down, I was like, as I'm feeling that deep emotion prior to talking to him, I was like, wow, okay, like what am I feeling? And I was like, wow, I'm feeling a lot. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling rejected. I'm feeling all this stuff. But like, what do I really want?
Mm-hmm.
What am I really, really moving toward right now? And what I really want is depth and closeness and quality friendships. And I know that's available with him and in moving in that direction. So as I revealed these parts of myself, what's beautiful, because I didn't come at the place of lashing, of being like, you have to be this way for me to be happy. He was able to hear me and hold space for me. And we deepened our friendship because we're moving in that direction, and we recognize we're both aligned with the same values. We're aligned with the same things we want. We were also very real and raw in that, without just jumping to conclusions and just creating big stories. So I don't know if I went off on a tangent or if that's useful right now.
No, that actually fits one of the out of balance. You did kind of the remedy for one of the out of balance Sagittarius, which I didn't read at the beginning, which is that assuming others know what you're thinking and then getting mad because your friends aren't mind readers. So you like kind of caught into that, like, wait a minute, maybe there's a chance this person doesn't know. I can't get mad if they don't know.
Right. And then the story we create, like I realized like and that's why I mean, like I was like, oh, I'm creating a big story. So, and unless I was real about it, but from a place of like, this is my story, then it would just be me sitting there projecting my story coming across as the truth, without him giving him any space to be like, wow, that's not even real at all. And then it probably shown up in defense or shut down.
Right, right. But you kept the dialogue going, which is like a productive dialogue. That's just what is really good for this time period. And it requires, yeah, going away, being alone with yourself. That's the Venus retrograde influence we're feeling now. And then using what you've learned when you went inward. So this is really beautiful use of this astrology, and I'm looking forward to it. I think, yeah, knowing what's coming up, I know some tips of how to navigate these holidays and what's happening, and tapping into the positive Sagittarius expressions and thinking of that spiritual connection. I love Sagittarius is also quite associated with nature, and so just getting out and looking at some beautiful nature that can do it any time of the year for me, but really during the season, that's also a good little thing to try.
Yeah, and especially I think in a lot of areas it's cold. And I know when I lived in the mountains in the winter, and now I don't live in the mountains in the winter anymore. But one of the things is nature is so important. Way to me, it feeds my soul. It definitely grounds me, brings me back into myself. And what I found is that because I didn't like the cold and I was so cold, it was like I would move really fast and I wouldn't really take in and pause. And so I love that you just acknowledge that, because I think that's a very useful tool for a lot of people that do feel connected with nature, in the sense of like, to do whatever it takes, like put a huge, like, wrap yourself up in a ton of stuff, but go outside and just take in the moments and that stillness. And now that we're right, I know that some people will be watching this right around Thanksgiving, but even that power of gratitude, like that does open up our heart center and it does bring us back into the moment. And so even sometimes finding those little things, because it's really easy to get, when we're focused on the big picture, or when we're thinking our way is the right way, it's really easy to get very narrow minded and we stop being grateful for what is. And I think bringing it back to gratitude is an extremely useful way to start opening our hearts, that give us that moment to pause. And that's when we might remember, like, oh yeah, that's right. And then that in that pausing, then we have the opportunity to start redirecting our energy.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really perfect use of this time of year. And so, yeah, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. If we didn't just put on a bunch of rain gear, we wouldn't go outside for about 4 months of the year. So, I tend to find some beauty in the forest in the rain if I have the right gear. Then you don't get wet. So it's kind of like gearing up for Sagittarius season. And I've just really enjoyed this episode. I think this is going to help a lot of people. And I'm already looking forward to the next one. It's going to be Capricorn season, which will shift everything yet again. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to be here, Valerie.
Absolutely. Thank you. And, I just want to say to everyone, just acknowledging again that, this time of year is not always like, it's such a joyous time for so many people, but it's also totally okay and totally normal if it's not your jam, if it's really challenging for you. And if you feel, when a lot of people are around you, that are happy and you're not feeling that you're not broken and nothing's wrong. And the way that I like to look at it is that they're right there in that place. There's an opportunity and available for you to potentially open something inside of yourself that can change the trajectory of your life if you just give it a little bit of love and attention, and to even give yourself that space and time to be in that with support and love.
Oh, thank you for leaving us with that. That is very important to remember. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, we will sign off now, but we'll see you next time. Please leave us some comments if there's things you want us to talk about. We want to hear what you have to say. So, thanks for joining us for episode 2. See you later.